There have been studies on islands, on spiders that live on islands and feed on invertebrates, and it's been found that if you remove those spiders, that some insects become super abundant and outcompete all the other ones, which means the diversity of those communities is depressed, shrinks, is reduced when you remove the spiders. Well, the same thing applies to larger animals, for example, predators or carnivores of all kinds, but some are particularly important in maintaining the structure and the diversity of creatures within ecological communities. And among these are the large mammalian carnivores, such as coyotes and wolves and bears to some extent. The removal of these animals is like taking the cop out of the neighborhood. Without police in our communities, sometimes things break down and bad people try to take control of the neighborhood, and whether it's selling drugs or something else. The same thing applies in nature. There are species that are the cops that maintain a certain kind of order or equilibrium within that community, which helps to maintain all the species in the community. For example, wolves are a classic example. When wolves were absent from Yellowstone National Park, where I think I'm speaking from right now, or close to it, the flora and fauna changed dramatically over a period of a few decades. One of the things that happened was that there was a population explosion of certain kinds of herbivores, including elk. And when they became super abundant, the elk became really abundant in some parts of Yellowstone National Park, and they basically overbrowsed and overgrazed many of the habitats, so some of the species of plants virtually disappeared or were mowed down so far every year that they couldn't ever reach maturity. They were stunted. For example, the aspen trees in Yellowstone and other parts of the West tended to only grow up to about this height, about 3 or 4 feet. And people wondered, why they seem to be browsed off at 3 or 4 feet. In the summer, they would continue growing, but then in the winter, they'd shrink again down to about 4 feet. And the reason was that the elk, in many cases, were browsing them down to the snow line. The snow came up this high, and the elk didn't like digging in the snow and eating any further down on the plants. But that meant that this important tree in the system, the aspen, wasn't ever maturing. And many of the services provided by aspens, such as the holes in their trunks where birds nest, were not available. The same thing applies to willows. Willows when they're overbrowsed, breeding habitat for many kinds of songbirds and cover for many kinds of animals is gone. Water temperatures heat up in streams because there's not enough shade produced by the willows. So species that we don't even think about as having an important ecological function often do, and when we remove them, we end up simplifying the ecosystem, reducing its interest, its diversity, and its beauty.